Albuquerque police have arrested a second suspect accused of kidnapping turned murder. Police say they've arrested 18-year-old Annabella Dukes. She is accused of luring a man through social media in February of 2020.
I watched him die right in front of my face, and it was horrific.
I got there in 5 minutes. I watched my son die right in front of my face.
You could hear the pain in the mother's voice as she recounted the moment she helplessly stood there watching life drip out of her son's body.
He went out there to go protect his brother, and he didn't even get a chance. He walked outside, and from my car and from the car that followed my car, they just opened fire. They shot my son 5 times. He didn't have a chance.
Elias Arturo, a former correctional officer, was killed in active service of love to his baby brother, who was kidnapped by a girl he had met on social media and used as bait to lure him out and eventually murder him right in front of his family. Let's look at the events leading up to this senseless act of violence. How did this nightmare begin? Well, it all started with a simple Snapchat message when Nicholas Arturo, a 20-year-old man from Albuquerque, New Mexico, met an 18-year-old Annabella Dukes on the Snapchat social app. Annabella had messaged Nicholas, and the young man was intrigued by her beautiful face and charming smile, which you could see from her pictures. They exchanged messages for a few days and seemed to hit it off. Annabella told Nicholas that she liked him and wanted to meet him in person. She suggested that they go to a park near her house where they could hang out and get to know each other better. Nicholas was already flattered by the prospect of a young, beautiful woman finding him interesting enough to want to meet him. So he instantly agreed and asked for her address. She sent him a location of where she said was her home, and she asked him to come pick her up from there. Nicholas was excited and nervous at the same time. He had never met anyone from Snapchat before, but he thought Annabella was different. She seemed genuine and sweet. He hoped that she would also like him when they would eventually meet in person. So he got ready and drove to her address, following the directions on his phone. When he arrived at her supposed home in his red Lexus car, she was already waiting for him outside, wearing her dazzling smile. She got into his car and off they went. Nicholas felt a surge of attraction as he looked at her. She was even more gorgeous in person. He drove to the park, hoping to get to know her better. But as they talked, he realized that something was off. She kept asking him strange and intrusive questions like how much money he had, where he kept his valuables, and if he owned any weapons. She also seemed to be constantly on the phone, recording or transmitting their conversation to someone on the other end, whom police later identified as her 17-year-old boyfriend, Adrian Avila. Nicholas felt uneasy and decided to end the date. He told her that he had to go home, and he turned the car around. But before he could exit the park, another car blocked his way. 3 masked men jumped out of the car, armed with guns and knives. They destroyed his windows and dragged him out of the car. After roughing him up, they searched his car and took everything they could find: his wallet, his phone, his necklace, his watch, everything. Nicholas was in shock and pain. He looked around for the girl, hoping that she would help him or call for help, but she was nowhere to be seen. She had betrayed him and set him up for a robbery. She had gone to the other car with the robbers, leaving him alone while he struggled for his life. Nicholas hoped that the nightmare would end soon. He hoped that the robbers would spare his life and let him go after they took all he had. But they had other plans. They wanted more money, and they knew who to get it from. They forced Nicholas to drive to his brother Elias's house, where he lived with their 2 other siblings. When they got there, they made him call Elias on FaceTime so he could see the gun pointed at his little brother's head. They demanded that Elias bring them $1,000 and a gun in exchange for his brother's life. Elias was shocked and terrified when he saw his little brother in danger. He loved Nicholas more than anything, and he would do anything to save him. He grabbed his own gun, which he had a license for, and ran out of the house to confront the abductors. He told them to let his brother go, or he would pull the trigger. Before he could do anything, one of the robbers, later identified as Adrian, fired at him, hitting him several times. Nicholas screamed in horror as he saw his brother fall. He managed to escape from the grip of his captors and ran to Elias's side. He tried to help him by putting pressure on his wounds, but there was nothing he could do. Life was slowly dripping out of Elias. The robbers panicked and fled in different directions, leaving behind their car and their loot. and Elias's sister called 911 at around 2:20 a.m., hoping that they could come and save her big brother. The paramedics arrived and tried to resuscitate him, but it was no use. Elias was gone. Not knowing what else to do, one of their brothers immediately called their mom, who rushed to the scene as fast as she could.
My youngest son called me screaming that my son, Elias, had been shot. I jumped in the car immediately. I got there in 5 minutes. I watched him die right in front of my face, and it was horrific.
The family was devastated, and all they wished was that the perpetrators be caught and made to face the consequences of their actions.
I want the people who were involved, all of them, to be put in prison. I want them to stay there.
Elias Arturo had a happy and fulfilling life while he lived. He was born on November 19, 1996 in Albuquerque, New Mexico to Luis and Alicia Arturo. He grew up with 2 brothers, Jacob and Nicholas, and 2 sisters, Delilah and Elia. He was the oldest of the siblings, and he always looked out for them. He was the glue that held the family together.
He wasn't just my son, he was my best friend.
Elias had a bright personality and a big heart. He was funny and charming, and he could make anyone laugh with his jokes and stories.
And we're all just really, really close, so we joked around and played around like we were friends.
He was also courageous and loyal. He would stand up for anyone who needed his help. He was passionate about his career as a corrections officer for the Metropolitan Detention, where he worked for several years before leaving. At 24, Elias had everything going on well for him. He had landed a new job at the Postal Service, which paid well and offered more benefits, and he had moved into his own place because he was about to tie the knot and start a family with the love of his life, the woman who shared his dreams and values. But then everything changed in an instant. A tragic twist of fate that no one saw coming. Meanwhile, the responding officers arrived at the scene moments later and were met with a gruesome sight. Elias's body was lying lifeless on the ground with 3 pistols, a rifle, and bullet casings littered all over the place. Nicholas, whose car was smashed and abandoned a few blocks away, was still in shock and visibly shaken. He blamed himself for what had happened to his big brother, because had he not gone on that date, his brother would still be alive. He cursed himself, but he had to also put himself together to help the officers with information that would help catch his brother's killers. So he narrated his ordeal with the girl, from when they started chatting to when they met, to the strange questions she was asking him about his personal stuff, and how he was eventually ambushed and robbed while she looked on. He told the officers everything that happened on that day, leading to the point when his brother was gunned down. Having gathered all the facts and information they needed, the officers immediately swung into action and launched an investigation into the case. They started by tracing the Snapchat account to Annabella Dukes. She was still texting Nicholas immediately after they fled the crime scene, pretending to be scared and innocent. She said, "Are you okay? I ran. I'm still running. IDK, where to go?" The officers were able to obtain Annabelle's cell phone data to track her cell phone pings. Her location was pinged around Alvarado Park, then to the crime scene, and finally to Adrian's house. They also found that Adrian's phone had the same location history as his girlfriend's. Further investigation revealed to the authorities that this was not an isolated incident. Annabella, Adrian, and the others had been in this business for quite some time.
18-year-old Adrian Avila and 18-year-old Annabella Dukes. Police say Annabella met guys on social media, then set them up to be robbed and carjacked.
Their tactics were to flaunt Annabella's beauty and charm as bait to lure unsuspecting victims to an isolated area so they could ambush and rob them of their valuables. Moments before Nicholas's robbery, Annabella and her lover had exchanged a text where Annabella said, "I'm gonna run away," acting like she was afraid. The text revealed that the duo was planning another robbery a few hours before they met Nicholas. The data on Annabella's phone showed a conversation with another victim whom they had robbed and carjacked a day before meeting Nicholas. That's the same car they used to ambush and rob Nicholas. As part of the investigation, officers brought the owner of the car and confirmed that they had been set up by a girl on Snapchat and robbed by 2 men at Alvarado Park, the same tactics they had used on Nicholas. Meanwhile, Elias's family continued to mourn their son and brother.
We hurt every day. We hurt. We can't sleep. We can't sleep or nothing, and we just want these people caught.
Please call Crime Stoppers. These people need to get off the streets. They are dangerous, and I don't want this to happen to any other families.
Crime Stoppers even offered a reward of $2,500 to anyone with information that would lead to the arrest of Annabella and her accomplice. After being on the run for a month, Annabella and Adrian eventually turned themselves in December 2021.
Tonight, after nearly a month on the run, an 18-year-old turns herself in, now in custody in connection to the murder of a former corrections officer.
She was charged with murder, kidnapping, 2 counts of armed robbery, tampering with evidence, and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder.
Is in a lot of legal trouble. So is the guy next to her, Adrian Avila. Both are wanted for multiple crimes, including the death of Elias Otero.
She initially pleaded not guilty to the charges and claimed that she was coerced by Adrian to participate in the crime. She said that she was afraid of him and that he threatened to hurt her if she did not cooperate. However, she later took a plea deal.
One of the suspects in a robbery scheme that ended in murder took a plea deal today. Anna Dukes was in court this afternoon where she took a plea deal for her part in the death of Elias Otero. Dukes admitted using social media to lure a man to a park.
She pleaded guilty to armed robbery with firearms, enhancement, conspiracy, and 2 other charges. The murder and kidnapping charges were dropped, and as a part of the plea agreement, she will serve 5 years behind bars. Adrian Avila was also charged with murder, kidnapping, 2 counts of armed robbery, tampering with evidence, and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty to any of the charges. At the time of making this video, nothing has been heard about the 2 other accomplices and Adrian's sentencing. Elias Otero's murder added to the body count of gun violence that rocked the city of Albuquerque between 2021 and 2022. The Albuquerque Police Department statistics show that the city recorded a total of 120 homicides in 2022, which exceeded the 110 killings that were recorded the previous year. What's more disturbing about these numbers is that most of these crimes were committed by teenagers who are repeat violent offenders, and most of the time, they are protected by the law from facing the full consequences of their actions. So they get out and commit more and more crime. To stop this crime cycle from endlessly repeating itself, Elias's mother, Alicia, joined forces with other parents who have lost loved ones in violent crimes to form the New Mexico Crusade for Justice. Their aim is to champion for more severe punishment for repeat violent juvenile offenders.
I think we need stiffer punishments for juveniles. In a lot of these cases, the murderers are under 18 years old. They're getting guns and they're committing these crimes. And once they turn 21, they're just, they're let out.
These families have come together in grief to console one another while they mourn the loss of their loved ones.
He went out there to go protect his brother, and he didn't even get a chance. He walked outside, and from my car and from the car that followed my car, they just opened fire. They shot his son 5 times. He didn't have a chance.
Alicia said that her son's death has been a nightmare for everyone in the family, including Elias's fiance. They remember him as a kind and loving person who spent his whole life protecting others and died doing the same thing.
I'm not ready to go through all this stuff yet, but he collected stuff like these. Everything in every aspect has changed for us. So it's just a constant battle within ourselves every day.
This case serves as a lesson to those of us whose lives revolve around social media. We should be more careful with our dealings with people we meet online. If not for our sake, for the sake of our loved ones, because they might be the ones to get caught up in the crossfire. We would love to hear your thoughts on this case in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe.